So the Brooklyn Nets just signed LaMarcus Aldridge, and holy shit, is NBA Twitter acting like this is the end of the goddamn world. So LaMarcus Aldridge signs with the Nets. I go on Twitter. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Of course, I make a couple of jokes. I'm like, oh my God, like really? But then like people are legitimately freaking out about the fact that they signed LaMarcus Aldridge. Like, holy shit, this is so unfair. This team is stacked. Talking about like narratives about Kyrie and Kevin Durant being on super teams after they left to go have their own teams, all that shit, which is perfectly valid, but like separate from the LaMarcus Aldridge signing. And we saw this same pattern with Blake Griffin when he signed with them like a couple of weeks ago. And just so you know, since then he's averaged a cool 7 points. Now, to be fair, it's on 3 games, but people were flipping out about the Blake Griffin signing as well. Like, it was the most unfair shit in the world, and this team is so stacked because they signed a guy who on the Pistons previous this season was averaging like 13 points on some of the worst splits I've ever seen. And not looking like an NBA player, period, that time for those, like, I don't know, was it 20 games on the Pistons? Something in that ballpark. LaMarcus Aldridge this year, he's been better than Blake was on the Pistons earlier in the season, but he hasn't been good. He's been dealing with injury issues this year. I looked at his stats. It was like 14 points on 52% true shooting, which is a decent bit below league average at 57%. And he's been a decent three-point shooter, but really where his fall off was huge was defensively. Like, he's never been a great defensive player, but he did have some value in just the fact that he was simply big. But it's kind of getting to the point where it's like how Marc Gasol is on the Lakers, where he's literally so slow that even like if he takes a foot outside of the paint, it's already too late. Like, that's how bad defensively LaMarcus Aldridge has been for the Spurs this year. And I really don't understand the outrage, because here's the thing. Well, I do kind of understand it from like a casual perspective, because LaMarcus Aldridge is a big name. Blake Griffin is a big name. Even if they have not been at their peaks in the past couple of seasons, other than Blake in 2018, that was his peak, but you know what I mean. Even if that's not been the case, they're still big names, and that's everything, isn't it? Like, the fact that it's a big name, that's the only thing that matters in that regard. But like, for example, Gorgie Jang is a free agent right now. He just got bought out by the Memphis Grizzlies. This year, he was shooting in the high 40s from 3. Low volume, but still like a 5 who can shoot the ball effectively. And defensively, he is a big body who can actually step outside of the paint a little bit. I wouldn't say he's that good at it, but, you know, he doesn't fall apart in that regard. Decent enough rebounder. He can protect the paint pretty well. Not a guy who makes too many mistakes. He can finish at the basket. Like, he's just a solid player. And no one would give a shit if this guy signed with the Nets. Like, literally, like, Woj tweeted about the LaMarcus Aldridge signing, and it had like 20K likes in the matter of minutes. If the tweet instead said the Nets are signing Gorgie Jang, it would have like 4,000 likes and a bunch of comments saying who. And that's the thing, really. That's really the end-all, be-all of it. Now, I was going to go on some, like, tangent, but I'm thinking now, like, it really is just the name. Because, like, LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin have not been good this year, and I don't expect them to be all that particularly valuable to the Nets right now. See, the whole thing about the fact that it's a super team and, oh, the team is so stacked, that was true before these signings, and that hasn't really changed that much more in the upward direction after these signings. Like, I think both of these guys can be relatively solid contributors to the Nets. I think LaMarcus Aldridge can be effective as a floor spacer at the 5 spot and hopefully not be too putrid defensively, and Blake Griffin can contribute with his playmaking and the fact that he is also a respectable three-point shooter and not the worst rim roller, even though he's not nearly the athlete that he used to be. I think both of these players can be, like, contributors, for sure. But to take this to the step where you're acting like they are at, it's like star caliber at this point, like, I saw some Photoshop of, like, the whole starting lineup of the team, and it's like, why the fuck would Blake Griffin or LaMarcus Aldridge start over Joe Harris? Why would that happen? that would be stupid. So that's not the starting lineup. So you can stop wasting your time with that. It's just kind of mind-numbingly stupid. Like I said, the Nets are a super team, and they are very stacked. But that was true before these signings. And these signings do not move the needle in a large amount, like at all. Both of these guys are not that good, but because they have big names, they're suddenly like it's the end of the fucking world. And I find it quite annoying. I'm not a Nets fan in any regard, but like it's not a big deal. Like genuinely, Gorgie Dang might have been a better signing than LaMarcus Aldridge. I'm pretty confident he would have been a better signing than Blake Griffin, and that's not going to make Twitter freak out. Like I said, it wouldn't matter. It would not matter whatsoever to people if they signed him, even if he was actually a better contributor. And if anything, I think this signing, like if I can talk about the actual meaning to it, I want to see more minutes from Nicholas Claxton because he seems like he can be a pretty good player on both ends. He can be a guy who finishes plays because there's plenty of playmaking on this Nets team, and there's going to be opportunity for offensive rebounds with all the shots they're going to be taking, and plenty of opportunity for pick and roll stuff offensively. And then defensively, he is really good at switching. Now, he's real skinny, so I'm curious to see what he would look like against a genuinely really good post player. But I think he can be their starting five and defensively be fantastic for them, which is what they need out of that center spot. LaMarcus Aldridge, what's he really going to bring? Like, assuming DeAndre Jordan continues to be in the rotation, LaMarcus Aldridge is going to be a spot stretch five at times. And even then, when they can go small like half of the time at center and do Jeff Green at center or even Kevin Durant at center when he is back and healthy. So these signings really don't fucking matter. Like at all. I don't like they're not like it's not a big deal. I saw some guy on my Twitter make a pretty good comparison, and it was once again talking about the names thing, and it was like this is essentially like Rondo and Dwight Howard on the Lakers last year. And even then, I think both of those guys contributed far more than these guys will. But that is like the thing though. Like it was well understood that Rondo and Dwight Howard at that point in their careers were not very good, but people have not like not very good as in like not nearly the player that they used to be, just to be clear. But that's not really been like the case with LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin. I don't think people have really come around to that quite yet. Because first of all, who's been watching the Pistons? So that's a thing. Who's been watching the Spurs really, and especially last year when they weren't making the playoffs, and they like the LaMarcus Aldridge is not nearly what he used to be. Blake Griffin is not nearly what he used to be, and it is casual. Trying to record a video, Mom. Can't wait to move out. LaMarcus Aldridge does not move the needle. Blake Griffin does not move the needle. Like, it's just two players who can be in the rotation. But because they're a big name, everyone's freaking the fuck out about it. I think I've made my point. Just like, you can have like your opinion on the Nets and like how valid you think their championship would be or whatever. It is a super team. All that stuff. My whole argument is just that LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin are not really relevant. They're not relevant to the conversation around the Nets. They're not relevant to how this affects Kevin Durant or Kyrie's legacy or James Harden's in terms of them winning a championship. Those signings are not like, oh, wow, suddenly this just becomes a free ring. Like, it's a free ring now that you have LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin. That's fucking ludicrous. So, yeah, that's it. I was thinking about doing just a post-game recap on the Vucevic debut with the Bulls because obviously I'm going to want to talk about that, but I also couldn't do a full recap today because I'm working on deep dive stuff, but I guess this video will suffice. But yeah, that's it. All right, bye.